Jessica X, how you doing?
I am doing good. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. It's good to have you here. I'm just going to start right off by asking, are you a pick-me?
I've been told that I am a pick-me, so yes, I suppose I am.
You know, I saw on one of your streams, someone came in and was saying they were basically, their whole thing was they were trying to change the connotation of pick-me, you know, to make it like a positive thing, which, if you think about it, I think it actually is a positive thing, because I think the I think the whole point of this thing is to get picked, right? So I don't see what the I understand the sort of connotation of pandering and just sort of saying whatever is, you know, is necessary, you know, pandering to men and all of that stuff, but it doesn't seem like a negative thing to me.
The whole pick me, okay, so at first I was very apprehensive to, you know, actually associate myself with the term pick me, because before I'd even come to the space, I'd heard the word pick me before, and it's always been used in a very derogatory manner, and everything associated with it has been quite derogatory. And it's the, you know, just the suggestion that you have no backbone, you have no standards, you put up with anything and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, I don't associate myself with that. I don't think that I put up with anything and everything. Something that I always talk about is standards. And so, you know, it got my back up and I wasn't keen to take on the term. However, when I've come into the space and it has been rebranded, you know, that there's nothing wrong with wanting to cater to a man, because that's essentially what a pick-me is, right? She wants to be picked and she wants to cater to a man in order to get picked. And so I looked at it, and there's a content creator who told me, he gave me the phrase, pick-me's get picked. And I was like, yeah, do you know what? I can run with this. With the rebranding, it's actually a positive as opposed to the negative that people have tried to make it.
Now, you know, one thing about you is, so what did you say? You're 25?
I'm 25.
You're 25, but you don't talk like someone that's 25. I'm talking about the clarity of thought, the sort of not being sort of blown to and fro by, you know, the wind. You have very clear, you know, arguments. And one thing that's rather impressive is the way that you handle, you know, all of these folks that are coming up, you know, on your platform, and they're hurling accusations, insults, you know, the regular kind of nasty kind of stuff, and you stay very composed, and do, I think, a masterful job of disassembling, you know, these arguments, if there is actually an argument, if it's not just name calling. So that's an unusual thing. It seems that maybe the structure of your show is somewhat modeled after Kevin Samuels' show. Is that right?
No, I started my show before I started watching Kevin Samuels. So I kind of had that format already. But what I did used to do was I used to hold bigger panels. And that is something that I took from Kevin, in that in these one-on-one situations, you can get information a lot across a lot more clearly, a lot more concisely. Sometimes when there are too many people on the panel, people are talking over each other, people interrupt, the point gets taken away. And so that is something that I took from Kevin Samuels, that one-on-one dynamic, and I think that works.
Something else, and maybe you were doing this before, but it seems like, especially some of your recent streams, you're only allowing like women to come up to talk, and of course that's seems to be what I mean. I there's only been a couple times I can remember on Kevin's show where he allowed guys to come in and talk.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it woman to woman, because sometimes I think as women we can relate to each other a bit more. You know, we can relate to each other a bit more, and in some situations I think, depending on the type of woman, some women are going to respond to having that conversation with a man, and others are going to respond to having that conversation with a woman. And so that's my plan there.
Well, you know, one thing I think a lot of I think once you get past the and I'm going to be honest, when I first saw you in the space, I was kind of I was a bit like, I wonder what this is, because I've seen other women in the space, the manosphere we're talking about, and it just started to come across like they're just trying to find ways to say things they think men will like, so that they'll come to their channel and they'll end up with a big subscription base, and then they can, you know, sell whatever it is that they want to sell. Or they're trying to make themselves look attractive to men, and in order to attract someone that they want, actually. You know, I've seen that also. But after a while, then I was like, that can't be the reason. Because this woman is very resolute and too composed for that to be the case.
You know, I have a very clear, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, for my age, being able to be quite concise with what I think and not, you know, changing with the wind. I have a very clear picture of what's right and what's wrong. And that's where it's very easy for me to distinguish in my mind between the two. And so that's why it's so easy for me to stay on track and not sway back and forth, because I do have that. In the space, I do get what you're saying, because even I myself have said to men, listen, it shouldn't be that easy for a woman to come in, tell you what you want to hear, and you support her, because that's how you get, you know, like maybe you want to call it an agent or an infiltrator or somebody that has ulterior motives. My thing is, never trust somebody who is, you know, agreeing with you 100% or telling you exactly what you want to hear. And if you go back to some of the conversations that I've had, I don't agree with everything the guys say. At the end of the day, I'm not a man. I'm a woman, you know, so I'm never going to agree 100% with everything that the guys say. And, you know, that's happened on panels before. So there have been times where I might push back against some of their arguments. There have been times where we don't align on certain things. The other day, for example, I was saying how I still want to be married. I still want to get married, you know, like legally, traditionally married. And they were talking about how, you know, the legal system is not in a man's favor. And I understand all that. And that's why I wouldn't be against a guy going for a cultural marriage, for example, or, you know, spiritual union, whatever term you want to use for it. However, for me personally, I know my own motives. I know myself well enough to know that despite the legal system being the way that it is, that's not going to be an issue for the person I'm with when I get married, because that's not my mindset. When I get married, I'm going to be married for life. That's my mindset.
Yeah, and that's refreshing. You know, okay, so I remember what is it, Judith Sandlin, Judge Judy. Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video. Judge Judy, and this is a long time ago, and honestly, I'm not sure that she's still alive, or
I think she is.
She's still,
yeah.
Okay, but I'm not sure if she's still married, because she got married and she must have been in her 60s or something when she got was probably remarried, and she said, you know, for better or forget about it. I'll bring that up because that seems to be the mindset of a lot of women, and it's the reason why you know, more and more men seem to be not interested in marriage. And frankly, if I was not married, I think I actually found a woman that is modest, and like, for instance, she doesn't have any tattoos. You know, she's traditional. She has traditional values. You know, she can cook. You know, I found a woman that is not the garden variety woman that I would have access to in the market right now. And if I was single and I had to choose, it's a crap show, and I don't know that I would get married because it would be too risky.
I understand that because, you know, as you say, there is this fair weather mentality towards marriage. And when you look at the vows, for better or worse, in sickness and health, for richer, for poorer, that those vows don't matter. You know, it's almost just become, I don't even think people are taking that in when they get married. And then at the same time, you have the promotion through women, and, you know, Judge Judy shined in as an example, where if you're not happy, bow out of the marriage, you know, get a divorce. If he's not doing something that you like, get a divorce. If you're, it's very fair weather, it's very fickle. The mentality towards marriage is very fickle. And yeah, that is one of the major reasons that guys aren't willing to get married, because it's not only that women are fickle and there are no implications to their fickleness. I mean, they're fickle, and the implications are you can lose half of what you work for.
Oh,
and so it's not something that people are going to go into lightly. And so that's why I say, even despite me wanting to be married, I completely understand why a lot of men, you know, marriage rates are declining. I understand that. I understand why men are saying, I'm not doing it. I totally get it. If I was a man, I'd probably be doing the same as them. I have to be honest, I would.
Yeah. You know, it's, you know, I mentioned Kevin Samuels earlier. One thing that makes him different is that he is an advocate for marriage. He promotes marriage. Now he has a particular, there's a particular approach that he takes with it. Is basically, he is taking it as a loss. So you get married, and you're basically, so how much how much am I willing to give up? How many of my assets am I willing to give up? So let me push those to the side and know that that is that's on the line. That seems to be his approach to getting married. And I'm sure when he does get married, or if he does get married again, he'll want it to be for life, because I think he takes it seriously. It didn't work out for him in his previous situations. But I'm in my second marriage also, and that's just seems to be what happens these days. But it seems like he is, he's pro marriage, but he's also sort of he's acknowledging the risk. He's acknowledging this might be a risk, and guess what? Grown-ups take risks. You know.
And it is a risk. And the only way to win at life is to take risks. You don't progress or move forward without taking risks. Without risks, you remain stagnant, you know. So it has to be a calculated risk. You know, look at it like stocks. You're analyzing the market, you're looking at the trends, you're aware of everything going into that situation, what you could possibly lose, what you have to gain. You need to analyze it and make a calculated decision if you do choose to take that risk on board. That's how I look at it. For me, again, I think marriages are an integral part of society when we're getting back down to it. And I feel as though it's, and even the statistics prove it, it's the best environment to raise a family in. It is. Right. And so when we're looking at what works and what's proven to work, marriages do work when they're healthy. And the problem is we don't have a healthy environment to facilitate those marriages and, you know, enhance society. That's the trap that we're in right now.
Yeah, you know, marriage had to be my choice because I wanted a family. You know, I have a 7-year-old, and with how destructive divorce and you know, a boy in particular being raised by a single mother, as destructive as that is, that's you know, that was never going to be, you know, a situation, you know, and you know, I love my wife, you know, we've, you know, built something meaningful together, but there's also a sizable portion of me that would never leave because I don't want to damage my kid. I wouldn't want my kid to sort of be dealing with the sort of aftermath of that. I was blessed with parents that stayed together and stuff, you know, marriage isn't perfect. It's not it's not for the faint of heart. It's a very challenging thing. Mm-hmm. And they had all kinds of challenges. You know, they had 4 kids. You know, they celebrated 51 years of marriage this year, and that's you know, that's what's happening. You know, and so I'm looking at it like that's what I want to be able to do. You know, I've said this before. I have this series on my YouTube channel called Blue Pill Testimonials, and in one of them, I kind of mentioned this, but maybe I'll go in a little more detail now. You know, my dad is, you know, maybe the best role model that, you know, anyone could hope to have. I mean, he's a terrific guy. He's hardworking. Yeah, all of the things that you want a father figure to be. Consistent. He is affectionate, but not really, you know, he's not the I love you, I love you, I love you. You know, that's my mom. He's more the, you know, I can call him any time of day, you know, and he's going to pick the phone up. And we can talk as long as I want to talk. You know, he's more the sort of showing it through his actions. But you know, my dad has only been with one woman. That's my mom. And he was not exposed to the modern dating market, right? And so when it came time for me to start dating, and you know, he wasn't going to have a whole lot of nuanced information to share with me. You know, you got to watch out for this, and you know, here's another thing that sometimes women will do, and like this, because he's only been with my mom, and she was always great. So, so it's sort of a challenge, I think, between my dad's generation and my generation. And part of what makes me interested in what's going on in the dating market is because I have a 7-year-old son. And I don't
Yeah.
I want to be able to tell him things that will help him to avoid certain kind of pitfalls, to avoid a lot of the issues that I had with women. That's been my primary that has been my primary issue in my life, is bad decisions with women. And I think the thing is that most guys, I think that they would say that that's probably been, something that hurt them the most, was making bad decisions with women.
Probably, there are two things in the world that stress men out, and ultimately they're intertwined, and that's money and women. It's going to be, the biggest cause of stress for guys. It's interesting because you talk about your parents' dynamic, and it's hard because as much as our parents can give us advice, that advice isn't necessarily tailored to today's society. We're not living in the same environment. But one thing that I can be thankful for is that my parents gave me a healthy, front row seat as to what works. What keeps a marriage going, what sort of qualities does a woman need, and what sort of qualities does a man need. I got to see that firsthand. And so for me, going out, I know what I need to be, and I know what I need to look for. I know those qualities because I saw it. And, every day isn't always perfect. But and here's the thing, sometimes it's like, am I looking for a fairy tale? Sometimes I think I can be quite fairy tale minded. And that's where I feel like my youth comes into it a bit, because I can be that way. But my parents, and my mum passed away last year, at the end of last year, but
Sorry to hear
still, my parents were always loving. They still loved each other. Like, they still cuddled, they still kissed, and I could be like, oh, you guys are so cringe, but that was still there. They never lost that. And I saw that all throughout. They never lost that element of their relationship. So it worked, it worked. So I definitely have, I feel like I have a blueprint. I have a blueprint to success. And, my dad's instilled certain values in me. And that's probably why I think the way that I think, because he had a very, again, that I think I picked up, this is right, this is wrong. This is what you need to do. This is what you don't need to do. And he's very clear in that. And so I think that's where probably my mindset comes from. And that's why people might tell me that my mindset is more male identified, or I can relate to guys, or things like that. I think that's where it stems from, is from how I've grown up.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back a little bit, digress a little bit. So I just want to kind of give the viewers a sort of roadmap of how I found out about you, and then ultimately how I was able to ask you to do this. So I have a show with Ike Ogiamian called Getting Ish Done, and it's a productivity sort of live stream. It's on his channel, and that was the culmination of, I saw that he was heavily, Super Chat Jesus, heavily involved on Kevin Samuels' show. I kept seeing these big dollar amounts in the Super Chat, the same guy, and then Kevin created a specific song, a sound clip, every time he would give, and then
Money
I started
World.
seeing, yeah, that's right. And then I saw him interacting with Solomon Jones, Solo TV 84, which I know you know him also, and I've seen you guys on a stream together before. my sort of initiation and introduction to the manosphere was actually through Solo, and it was the YouTube algorithm, sort of certain things that I was watching, Jordan Peterson and all kinds of stuff that's along that line. A lot of apologetics, philosophical kind of stuff, politics, usually stuff like Ben Shapiro and Tim Pool, and I tend to be a little more. I'm kind of independent. I would describe myself as being sort of a black nationalist / libertarian. So I'm definitely conservative fiscally, and with respect to, and traditional with respect to sort of societal issues and things. Frankly, I think that the political system in America is broken. The two-party system doesn't really work. A black party is needed because the Dems and the Republicans are not adequately addressing the issues of the black community, in particular the issues of black men. But because of sort of my interest in certain topics, I started seeing Solo's videos like all over the place, and so I was like, oh, who's this guy with the Dom DeMarco, and what's going on here? And then and he talks about a pretty kind of diverse array of topics, and he's into anime, and then I started hearing him talk to a lot of these relationship type of topics, and I was like, wait a minute. People are talking about this stuff. They're talking about it in this frank of way, and then you kind of get into that whole thing where you think you're the only one that's having certain kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
And so his stories started to sort of validate, and he has a series called Simp Tales. They started to validate and make me feel like, hey, I'm not like a Martian or something. And so that's how I kind of got introduced to the manosphere. And then I think it was because Solo was on the 7, and then I got introduced to Donovan Sharp and Myron Gaines and all of those guys, Mr. Lucario and Kevin Samuels. And then I started really dealing with Kevin Samuels, because I'm a Christian, and so a lot of his approach to it seems to be very congruent with my beliefs, and he is also specifically able to address a lot of these issues that you find in the black community, with single mothers. 75% of it's somewhere between 75 and 80% now. 80% or something of black women are baby mamas or something. It's just crazy, how that stuff is happening. But all of that stuff sort of led me to Ike. And then I asked Ike, because I knew that, you guys knew each other. So he connected us. But that's a long story, a long approach to getting to how I got you on this program. But yeah. So how did you meet Ike?
I met Ike probably the same way you did. I saw him in Kevin Samuels' chat, and as you say, super chat god. So he kind of stands out. He's making these big donations, so you can't help but notice him. So yeah, he stood out for that reason. And from there, I started seeing him around in a few different, other channels, say hi in the chat, and yeah, he started a channel, went over and started listening. And his channel, what I liked about it, or I found refreshing, is that he's giving a different side to a lot of the content that goes on in the space, because we're discussing problems and, we're getting it all out there. And he has something, for me, the content is quite motivational, promotes like productivity. And I feel like it's something that guys need to be listening to as well, because one thing I always talk about is actions, productivity. Let's not just talk about it, let's do it. Progress, and I think that's something that Ike definitely promotes. So yeah, that's how I met Ike. I came into the space probably, the same way that you did. I saw a video by O'Shea. O'Shea's video was the first video that I saw, came up in my algorithm. I was like, okay, this is interesting. It was funny. It was more, I can't even remember what the topic was on that video. All I remember thinking is, this is really funny. And it was a live chat, so I was speaking to people in the chat. Somebody said they had a channel, so I was like, okay, I'm going to come and check it out. Went over to their channel, checked out Mr. Fantastics, got on a panel there, and that's where it all started. And I was like, okay, I've never seen a place where we're having these discussions live. These are things that usually no one talks about, and it's things that you recognize are going on in society and you see it, but everyone almost walks around as though they're oblivious to it, or maybe they're just like me, maybe they see it too, but because no one speaks about it, I'm not going to bring it up, they're not going to bring it up, so we never have these conversations in real life. So that's what drew me in, the fact that you could get into these conversations, that they were so relatable. It drew me in, and then I got lost in the algorithm. I'm not really as familiar with, I think, the content creators you watch. I've never watched Donovan or Myron or... who is it, Mr. Lucario? I've never watched those content creators, but I'm familiar with Kevin Samuels. I'm familiar with Solo TV. So yeah, got caught up in the algorithm and just started watching. And my channel came about. There were some tensions in the space at one point. There were tensions as to whether women should be around. And I caught a lot of flack for the behavior of other women who were in the space. They disappeared. I was the woman that was left. And so I felt like it was all directed at me because I was almost like the only woman in sight. And so it was like, okay, because at this point I was just going on panels and giving my opinion. And it's like, we don't want you here, we don't want to see you. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a channel. If people want to listen to me, they have a choice to come over and listen to me. And if you don't want to see me, because that's what I was hearing, well, just avoid my channel. And it keeps it very simple. You don't want to listen to me, just don't come over. Problem solved. And that's how my channel started. That's why I made a channel.
One thing interesting, that last thing that you said about, if you don't like, what's on the channel, don't watch. Go somewhere else. But for a lot of people especially that have been sort of pandered to and catered to for much of their life, for their whole life, they expect to be able to go anywhere and hear only the stuff that they want to hear. And so it's not even enough for them to have options. If you don't like this, go over to someone else's channel that they create content that you dig. They have to have an issue with your content. Mm-hmm. I had somebody now these blue pill testimonials, they're, I'm not trying to drag anybody. It's very sort of covert and, and secretive. I'm not, using anybody's names. I'm trying to obscure timelines so that people that know me wouldn't know who I'm talking about. I'm doing all of that. And I did one where I said, the name of the video is "Don't Move In." And basically it was one of my experiences, because I tried that a couple times. neither of which worked out well. Where, you know, I moved in with someone, right? They already had their own place. I, you know, put my stuff in storage, moved in with them, and I suggested in my video that that's not a good idea because you have no bargaining power. You have no control, because the only thing that you can do is say, you know, stop doing that, or, you know, whatever, or else I'm leaving. That's all you got. You don't have anything. You and
no
so
leverage. Yeah,
there's no leverage. And the first thing was, I didn't know the person for that long. They were super aggressive, and I'm an introvert, so so I'm not going to go out of my way to, you know, I never really have gone out of my way to meet women, right? And so I think that has made me somewhat susceptible to women that are aggressive. And if a woman is aggressive, now I know that that's probably a bad sign. Because that shows that she's not willing to, even with respect to meeting people, she's not willing to, you know, serve in more of a passive role. So what that means is that basically in everything in the relationship, that's what it's going to be like. So, and the thing is that aggression tends to change after they think they have you locked down. So it's like, okay, well, I was really aggressive in the beginning. I sold you this, but now that we're together and you don't have any leverage, now I'm not going to do any of that anymore. Plus, I'm going to pull out the real stuff. This is really who I am.
Gets worse.
So yeah. But, you know, I put that story out there, and someone put a comment, something about, well, they said they called my video minimist, like the male version of feminist.
Male feminist.
You're right, minimist. They said because of this series of videos that they were going to unsubscribe from my channel. I was like, how did you know, and then of course I went and I quickly looked. I went over to their channel, and they had only been subscribed, you know, on YouTube for like 3 days. So it's
okay.
So it's like, come on, man. So speaking of trolls,
an area that I'm familiar in.
Yeah. So I'm sure you have some troll stories. Maybe pick one or two of them that were particularly not that great. You know, ones that you don't mind sharing.
Do you know what? I am well versed in the world of trollage, but it's actually hard for me to pick out some stories. Maybe because there are so many that it's hard for them to stand out, and they all sort of do the same things, so it gets very repetitive. You know, that they're not. They struggle to make themselves stand out to me. It's hard.
So what is it that you said they sort of do the same thing? What is the same thing?
It's going to be you're a pick me. It's going to be cam up. You're a catfish. It's going to be, you know, just I've heard that I've got a voice changer, that I'm really American. Just ridiculous arguments. Those are the ones that I mainly get. You're a panderer. You're pandering to men. I can be, you know, pretty assured that if somebody is coming up to troll, they're going to hit on one of those three things: pick me, panderer, or catfish. So there's not much variety in their trolling.
Yeah, I I don't know. It just seems like people could be more creative or something with some of the stuff that they do. I mean, the stuff is sort of like you can see the stuff from around the corner.
Right, very textbook.
Yeah. All right. So Kevin Samuels has talked about this whole high value man thing, and that has become like a major topic.
A hot topic, yeah.
It's a hot topic, and what's interesting about the topic is that although the sort of our awareness of this concept is probably due to Kevin, but the concept is not a new concept. It's something that's been around for a long time. This whole six-figure talk. I mean, everybody recognizes that. But his list of things, the 10K per month, and having been making 10K for 3 to 5 years in group acceptance, by other high value men, having a network of high value men, visibility, he talks about having basically a resume that's like LinkedIn status, where all of the stuff that's on there is very clear. It's not like stuff like selling stuff out of the trunk of your car or selling shoes or something. It's reputable kinds of jobs, and career path, and then utility. And I like that topic too because there's no such thing as he says, as a high value loner. You can't be sitting in your basement, and nobody knows who you are. You don't associate with anybody, and you're just hoarding money. That's not a high value man, because, the value comes in what you can actually do for other people. Ike, for instance, is the definition of a high value man. The definition of it, right? And he's super generous, willing to connect people, wants to serve in that capacity, and is very skilled, and obviously he's making a lot of money in all of that stuff. So what I want to ask you is about what makes a high value woman. So do you have some thoughts about that?
So for me, a high value woman would be, we go, looks, fertility, youth, right? So looks, some people may call it being superficial, shallow, but at the end of the day, your looks are going to be important to a man. They are. So that goes for trying to make the best out of yourself, make sure you're well groomed, keep your body in shape. And this is, to me, it's, you see, here's where, just to quickly go off a bit, I'm going to go back to it. Here's where it's different, because it's a lot harder for a guy to be high value than it is for a woman to be high value. To be a high value woman, it comes down to very basic things. Whereas for a guy, you have to work and strive, and it's a journey. It's a long journey for a guy to be high value. But for a woman, looks, right? So capitalize on your looks, make the best of your looks, basically. Make sure that you're doing things that can enhance your appearance. So working out is a big one. Women don't like that, but just something as simple as keeping yourself in shape. Fertility, at the end of the day, one of our most valuable assets as a woman is, if not the most valuable asset, is the ability to reproduce. You're there as a tool to carry on somebody's legacy, to carry on your own legacy. And so that's one of your most valuable assets right there. So fertility, youth ties into the first 2 points, in that during your youth, you're likely to be better looking, in better shape, and have better fertility. And then we get on to the basic topic of femininity, right? So that's a woman that is cooperative, has the basic nature of being able to, because again, we spoke about fertility and fertility children. You need to be able to bring those children up in the best possible way, and that means that you have to be nurturing, caring, and even towards your partner as well. Because I think people sometimes miss that element where, you know, women will say, I don't want to be a mother to my husband. And it's like, you're not, that's not being a mother. That's called love. That's love, where you nurture somebody and care for them and, you know, cater to them. That's love to me. That's not necessarily mothering. It just happens to be that we love our children and we love our partner. And so we want to do those things. So it ties hand in hand. So again, just being cooperative, being able to cook, clean, be domesticated. Those are the main four things that I would say make a high value woman. And the thing is, those shouldn't even, there should be more to it to create a high value woman. But because of the society that we live in, and because those traits are so rare, it is that basic to be a high value woman. And women can't even manage that. But it's so, so basic. And it's like all you need to do really is just embrace your true nature and keep yourself in shape, and you could be a valuable asset in society. It's so easy to achieve, but women are even struggling with that in itself. And I think, you know, what Kevin Samuels did is, it's almost genius in a way, because what he did is he gave essentially a target for men to try and achieve, to strive to achieve. So he gave you, you know, when he lists the high value man and he gives those different attributes, it's like, okay, I know what I need to, you know, I know sort of the level that I need to get to. Very clear level, and you make your plans to get there. And then what it also did on the women's side is, not only is he telling you what you need to do to be able to achieve that level as well, but he also just highlighted the delusion that's going on in society. That's like it's the genius of it, you know. So it works all the way around. So he highlighted how these women are bringing, to be frank, absolutely nothing to the table, but thinking that they deserve the best. And it just puts it on, you know, front stage so everybody can look at it and just be like, what is going on in society right now? And it's good because other women can look at that and say, do you know what? I do some of that. I'm looking for that, but I don't have this, that, the other. Okay, so this is how people are seeing me when I'm out there in the world, you know, saying that I deserve a six-figure man. This is how everyone's looking at me. They're getting to see that through somebody else. So, you know, it works perfectly. That high value concept, yeah.
Yeah, you know, now, of course, one thing that's obvious is that you didn't say make a lot of money. You didn't say anything about degrees. You didn't say anything about, you know, having you know, a lot of assets, or owning a house, or you didn't say any of those kinds of things. And I think it's, you know, you have the conversation with a certain kind of person, which seems to be a rather prevalent person, you know, among women, then they would be hyper offended by what you said. Oh, you mean my degree doesn't mean anything? Hey, you know, I own my own, you know, I have two cars, and I have, you know, X, Y, and Z. And, you know, guys don't care about that stuff. I know I don't care about that stuff. My wife, you know, I didn't care about any of that stuff when I was looking for my wife. None of that stuff mattered.
I call those things the cherry on the cake. Mm-hmm. That's what I call those things. So the education, the assets, those are cherries on top of the cake. But at the end of the day, without the basic ingredients, which are the things that I listed before, you don't have the cake. You need the basic ingredients to be able to make the cake. And so I tell women, like, listen, I've been to uni. I am proud of my degree, right? I'm proud of what I did. But I'm not saying that because I have that degree, I get to determine a certain amount of value. Because I know to a lot of guys, it's like, okay, that's nice, but do you have the basics that I listed before? You know, so, and there are guys out there who like an intelligent woman, right? They like an intelligent woman, but your intelligence, and this is where women get caught up, because guys do like an intelligent woman or someone that they can converse with and, actually have real discussions with. And there are a lot of guys like that. So they hear that and think, okay, because they like that, that means that, I'm very valuable. But they're missing the very basics of what makes a woman valuable. They're missing the basics of value. So they're going ahead of themselves and they're looking at the cherry on top of the cake, or the icing on the cake as being the full cake. Who wants to eat icing on its own?
Yeah.
I don't. I'd rather eat sponge, sponge cake with cream in the middle than and no icing than just icing on its own. So women have to get back to the basics. Get back to the basics, and then you can pride yourself on, your education. That can make you stand out from different women. But unless you have the basics, your education means nothing. Your business means nothing. Your house means nothing. Your car means nothing. These are things that primarily we value in men, not in women.
Yeah, around the manosphere, you hear this, women are born and men are made. And one thing that you said about it being so much more, well, it being very difficult to becoming a high value man. All the work that someone has to put in to be able to accomplish what's necessary to, command, to have 10K a month and to, be accepted by other high value men and have a network of high value men, and to have that visibility with a sustainable career path and utility, the ability to be generous because of resources, and because of the network of high value men, to be able to connect and network within that. So that's that's tough. And
it's I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's like we're just saying, it's so easy as a woman to fulfill your purpose. It's so much harder for men. And so it makes no sense to me why these women are going out of their way to essentially be men. It's all about the career. It's all about trying to compete. It's all about trying to make as much money as possible, about being as educated as possible. Masters, PhDs on top of PhDs, Why are you going out of your way to try and be a man when it's so easy to be a woman? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense at all. I don't get it. I don't.
Yeah, and again, this is just underscoring what we've already said. But this hype. Well, it's a little bit of a pivot to another topic, but it's definitely related, and that's this concept of hypergamy. And I think that the term, it just makes total sense. Obviously, women want to, they want a man that's of a certain level for purposes of security, for purposes of protection, right? And, but men don't require that or need that or want that, right? So whereas a woman in general is going to be looking for a guy that is making more money, that has had a career that's more, stable, and all of those kinds of things. A guy, he doesn't, since that's not a concern, a guy could say, hey, you know what? I wonder what's up with this this woman that just checked me out at the McDonald's. You know, she was pretty cute. I wonder if I could meet her and talk to her. And that's a little, it's a little hyperbolic, but the point is that those since a man doesn't require, a high value man does not require the finances of the person that they're with, it sort of opens up a really wide pool of folks that are accessible for a high value man. But when a woman gets to a certain point with a certain number of degrees and she's making a certain amount of money, then what it tends to do is it tends to narrow the possible candidates.
Closes that pool. Yep.
Yeah, and in one of the sort of travesties in America with black women is that black women have sort of bought this, you don't need no man, you can be independent, you can be X, Y, and Z, instead of going to college marriage minded, no, you go to school to get your degree, where other cultures of women, they're going to college, and that's a primary consideration. They're trying to get their MRS when they're when they're in college, right? But it just has created this situation where you have all of these black women with master's degrees, with PhDs, with kids, single mothers, and only 25% of black women are going to get married. It's pretty funky, but nobody's going to apologize for this big lie that has been told. No one's going to apologize for that. They're not going to say, you know what, we were wrong, and because we were wrong, here, I'll give you your youth back. No,
yeah.
Get your youth back. So, yeah.
And it's spot on. Women are closing off their options when they're pursuing that sort of lifestyle. Whereas for and this is like one of the concepts they don't understand, a high value man has everyone to choose from. Everyone. Because all women want that high value man, they have basically 100% of women to choose from. Whereas when you're a woman and, you're getting your PhD, you're doing whatever, you're closing yourself off to possibly 10% of men, 15% at most, if we're just going off six figures alone, not even, the utility, how many years you've been doing it. You're closing yourself off to 90% of men. So they don't realize what's going on with the numbers there. And even we can talk about different cultures of women who, get educated, different cultures of women who tend to be educated. I don't know how it is over there, but over here we have a lot of Indian women who are doctors. We have now a lot of Africans who are moving into the medical field, and these women are getting educated, whether it be nursing, midwifery, all sorts, and even higher up in the medical scene. But one thing that they're not doing is they still understand the basics of what they have to bring to the table. And this is why these women are still getting married. And they're like, but that educated woman over there is married. Well, guess what? She still understands what men want. And one of the biggest problems that we have as women is and even I had to check myself on this at one point. We're very sure, we're very certain of what we want. We know what we want and we're defiant about it, okay? We're not going to give up. We're not going to drop our standards on what we want. But when you ask a woman what the man that she's looking for, so because in our heads, we can create this, the vision of this man, this perfect man that we want. When you ask these women, what does he want? you know, that perfect man that's in your mind, what does he want out of a woman? You're going to hear crickets,
That's right.
silence. And I
That's right.
had to catch myself on that. And I said, you know what? Nobody's ever asked me that question before. No one's ever asked me, what do you bring to a man? Ever. No guy's ever asked me that in my life. And so it's not something that we think about. And so we need to start instilling that in each other. If we want the best for our friends, our daughters, our family, we need to start instilling that in them. And so when I was asked that question, I was almost dumbfounded. I sat there and I was like, and I really didn't know, you know, what to say. And then I listed off a few things, and they were basics. Like I said, like I can cook, you know. I try and be feminine. I try and be a nice person to be around. And so they're like, yeah, but, you know, you're on the right track. But it was weird because I did struggle. And so I started to realize what men are dealing with, because we're all here and we don't know what they want, but we're very, very clear on what we want. And so there's an imbalance there. We're all about us, but we're not about the man. But we want him so much, but we don't care about him at the same time. It's a very weird dynamic.
What is Dr. T. Hassan Johnson? What does he talk about? ConcuSurfs or whatever. And basically, a ConcuSurf is it's a man that is occupying a certain space, right? So the woman has all of these specific ideas, and as long as he checks those boxes, it's, in general, women don't really care about anything else about the guy. Not really about what he feels about X, Y, and Z, what his hopes and dreams are, none of that stuff matters. All that matters is that he has certain characteristics. And so then he's like a cookie cutter. He can just be transported into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I interviewed Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and one thing that he was talking about is that, so first of all, men have not really had language or a platform to discuss these kinds of issues. Women have had platforms, and women tend to be, you know, amongst each other, tend to talk about a lot more stuff than guys usually will. You know, guys will talk to each other, they'll confide in each other about stuff, but really the way that we sort of get over stuff is not really by talking about it. It's by going and doing something together. So maybe going on a fishing trip with some guys, don't even talk about any issues the whole time, but just, you know, but just getting into, you know,
Release,
something else.
stress release. Yeah.
That's right. And, you know, psychologists and stuff have, you know, started to tell men that is unhealthy or something, not to talk about your issues. But the fact is that men and women are different, and men may not necessarily want to talk about certain things. But in this situation, in this case, men need to talk about what it is that they actually want. They need to start forming their own list of attributes and of things that they want the women that they approach to have. Because too often has been the case that, you know, men won't have those particular standards. And then, I mean, I'm just going to be honest. It took me until my mid-30s before I had developed the ability to walk away from a woman. I'm talking about someone I was in a relationship with. So literally every relationship that I've ever had up until my mid-30s, the woman left me. Now, and it wasn't because she was perfect and I was terrible. she was doing all kind of stuff too. You know, I mean, I'm not saying I was, you know, perfect, but typically she was doing all kind of stuff that, you know, wasn't the, you know, stuff that I should permit, but I just let it happen. Right. And part of that was because, my parents, you know, like I said, they're still together, and, I took, you know, I didn't want to be a quitter. You know, I took it seriously that, hey, I'm just going to work through this. I can handle it. I'm tough. You know, it's not a big deal, you know, that whole kind of thing. But I started to realize finally that you can't give that to everybody, because because some folks are not worthy of that. Some folks, they don't want that. And all you're going to do is end up hurting yourself and probably making them miserable too. But you know, not being able to walk away because I didn't have a clearly formed sort of list of things where these are the attributes that the person needs to have. These are the things that I'm not going to accept. I didn't have those. I didn't have that clearly formed. And so when stuff was happening that wasn't appropriate, since I hadn't clearly defined those things, it made it hard for me to walk away. And I know a lot of guys that they same sort of situation. And then we know that at least in the Black community, 80% of divorces are initiated by women.
So I think men do need to have that blueprint in their head. You need to know what makes you happy, what you're looking for in a woman. You need to create that blueprint, because we as women, we have that blueprint. Men need to create the same. And this is why, you know, people will hear me say it so much, but I'm always like, standards, 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 because you can only impact society so much as an individual. But one thing you do have control over, you do have full control over, is your, you know, your bubble, your environment, your small, what you allow to be in your circle. That we do have control over. And the only way that you have control over that in a way that makes you happy is by having standards. You have your standards there and you enforce them. And if somebody doesn't meet up to those standards, walk away. Walk away. And that's hard for guys to do, but you have to do it. Because here's the thing, and like I said, when you create those standards and that blueprint, it's based on what you need to make yourself happy. And if you let any of those standards slip, as I said, those are the things that make you happy. When you let those standards slip, you're going to become what? Unhappy. So you have to create those standards, and you have to not just create them, not just know them in your head, but enforce them. That's the most important thing, enforcing the standards. And as you say, be willing to walk away. The power of walking away, because I can say as a woman, if I come across a guy, right, and he says he doesn't like something, he doesn't put up with this, that, the other, he has those standards. And I do something that he doesn't like, and he lets it slide. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And I do another thing that he doesn't like, and he lets it slide. I'm like, okay, you're a pushover. In that situation, I'm going to start taking advantage of that guy, whether I mean to or not. I'm going to do it because there's no boundary. And people get offended when they say, you know, women are like children. But in that sense, with children, they need very clear boundaries of what they can and can't do. And as a parent, you enforce it. Otherwise, they run riot. You know, the kids will run riot. So you need to think of it the same way. If you don't have those standards that you enforce, women are going to run riot, and they're going to walk all over you. They are going to trample over you with no mercy. They are. And so the other thing is, I'm going to lose respect for that person. And that's one of the hardest things, because if you don't respect a man, you can never look at him as a leader. You can never look at him as somebody that's going to be, the head of a relationship, the head of the household. It's not going to work. So men need to have that standard, because if you don't, women's nature, we're going to walk all over you.
Yeah. And something about the manosphere is that basically it's guys that have had these kinds of experiences, and they're saying, no, we are going to have standards, and we're not going to just take anything anymore. And what's interesting is that that's called misogynist.
Do you know what? That's a shaming word. That's a word for from women to tell you stop. Stop right there, because what a lot of women don't want you to do is have standards. Listen, women are going to say, basically, they want to be able to run riot. They want to be able to run in the shop and eat all the candy. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do. They want to be able to just, have free reign. And to them, that's fun. For a while, I'll say that. For a while, it's fun. And so when you try and enforce your standards, just know that you're going to get pushback from women. There's going to be pushback. They're going to call you a misogynist. They're going to call you a female hater. They're going to call you G words and all sorts of names. There's going to be pushback, right? But again, keep your standards strong. Keep them strong through the face of all of that. Don't let them shame you into dropping your standards again. Don't do it.
And Dusty, that'll be a...
Oh, Dusty, yep. Beta male.
That's right. Speaking of Dusty, Dusty talk, sprinkle, sprinkle. So, you know where I'm going. So
yeah.
This whole thing with Shira 7, and so you had a live stream, I don't know, maybe a week ago, and so it ended up being a lot longer than you anticipated, because you just basically got up in the morning and just got on, and then you kept saying that you're going to do a proper stream later on, right? And you're going to do a stream later on, and of course you didn't end up doing the stream later on because you were on for so long.
Yeah.
And Shira ended up getting on there. Pink Pill was on there, and Obsidian got on. It ended up being a very interesting, pretty engaging kind of stream. But two people in particular got caught. Kevin was on there. Two people got caught in the middle of this whole thing, is because Shira had found someone and claimed that that person was you, and then sent a bunch of her followers over there to harass her, and then found some other dude that she thought looked like Kevin, and then was attempting to do a similar kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that whole drama?
Yeah, so my problem with Shira started initially. Shira made a video about me first, and I'd made a video about gold diggers and how to spot the signs of a gold digger. The thing about Shira's content is it taps into a basic part of female nature, which is hypergamy, right? The desire to have a man who is going to provide, the desire to get resources. And I always say, to me, some people don't like it, but I say hypergamy is natural. You're not going to change hypergamy in women. You're just not. It is what it is. However, what we see there is the dark-sided, the dark side of female nature, the dark side of hypergamy, where we're promoting lying, cheating, do whatever you have to do to get the bag. And that's my problem with that content. Not that it's about women being hypergamous. Women are always going to be hypergamous, but it's the way that they're going about it, and it's detrimental. And what it does is it messes up the relationship dynamic with between men and women as a whole, right? So primarily that was my issue with the content, and it descended into a place that I honestly never saw it going. You know, if you had asked me a few days before that happened, could that have been a possibility that these two people would be dragged into it? I couldn't even fathom it. It descended into somewhere that just it was just so toxic, you know. And as you say, I'd woken up that morning. I'd woken up and I'm seeing my name tagged in this stuff, and I'm seeing that, you know, Jessica X is Soraya, and I'm like, what's going on here? You know, what's going on? And so I've searched up the name Soraya Stewart, and I've seen this woman's. She has a YouTube page. I've seen her page, and I just clicked on her latest video, and I was looking at the comments underneath, and I saw the most foul, disgusting comments that you can imagine, just disgusting. And so I saw that. I left her a message. I said, listen, I'm doing a stream about this. If you can make it over, please come over. And I went straight to make a stream because I'm like, I'm going to clear this up. We can't have this going on. The way that they were harassing her, to clear her name, to clear my name, to try and resolve it all. So I just went on, and I thought I was going to be on for maybe like half an hour, you know, half an hour, and just clear things up. And then the stream just kept taking one turn after another, after another, after another. And yep, as you say, Shira came up, Pink Pill came up, Soraya and Peter came up, you know, the two people that were meant to be me and that were meant to be Kevin Samuels and myself. So it just took, you know, Kevin came up there at the same time as Peter, just to, you know, all four of us on the panel, just to show how ludicrous it is. But people ask me why I protect myself, why I'm trying to protect my identity. And, you know, I came into this space la di da di da, you know, not understanding the dynamics of what really goes on. And so my picture was already out here. I hopped on the panel with my picture up. My pictures were out. And then I realized what was going on with the doxing, and even deeper than the doxing, not just putting your name out there, because the implications of that, it's like, well, to me anyway, doesn't really, not really any consequences to that, but it's what happens after that. It's trying to find out where you work, contacting your employers, it's trying to find out where you live, it's, you know, pulling up to your house, it's all of this stuff that comes with it. It's the harassment that comes with it. And what happened to Soraya and the way they swarmed over there in their hundreds to go and attack her, that's part of why I say, do you know what, I'm only willing to give so much, because I'm not opening myself up to that level of toxicity. At the end of the day, you know, I can come on panels and I can deal with it easily, because it's like, okay, you know, we're going to have this conversation, and at the end of the day I click off and I'm in the comfort of my real life. But when you start to merge the two, you don't get to step away and just, you know, debrief and de-stress and just let it all go. Because sometimes when I do the panels, they can be draining. They can actually be draining on me, and not physically, but mentally. So by the end of them, I can be quite mentally tired. And even with all the trolling and, you know, just dealing with all that negativity, it can be mentally draining. And so the last thing I want is to be able to blend, you know, my everyday life with YouTube life, and not be able to escape that mental drain, and to protect what I have going on in my real life. There has to be that barrier, because there are people who are going to stoop to levels that you couldn't even think of. You know, when you think about just say somebody does something you don't like and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. There are other people who, when they think that way, they're going to be thinking things you could never imagine. Never would I. And Sheeran knew that wasn't me. She knew that that was, a separate, innocent girl. Yet she still did what she did because she thought it would be funny and she thought it could impact on me. And so that sort of, that vengeance mindset, that's toxic right there. And we have toxic people on YouTube. You have people who are doing things they wouldn't do in their real life, saying things they wouldn't do in their real life. It people become very emboldened through the internet, through YouTube. It's a whole different monster.
Now, someone came up on the panel and claimed that Cher is some sort of witch.
Yeah, so she dabbles in the occult and witchcraft and that whole scene.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by that. I mean, just from the first time that I found out about Shira was Solo he called in. He called in and then he videoed his call in with her, and he was straight trolling her, but she was on for a long time. One thing to notice was that her donations went up and her interaction went way up when he was trolling, because he has that talent. He can talk and he can say what he knows what people are interested in. And that's actually how I found out about her. And she just came across as a very kind of low budget, just kind of a typical thing. And you see this kind of gold digger kind of thing in the sort of a man is only valuable for his wallet kind of perspective on things. And of course that, but I did want to ask you about just one more thing, and this is not really related to anything. So you live in London, and I frequently tour with the Count Basie Orchestra. Of course, the Count Basie Orchestra has not been touring recently because of the pandemic. But the last one of the last tours I did with them was in 2019 during the summer, and we played at a club in London called Ronnie Scott's. You familiar with that club?
No.
Yeah, it's a jazz club. I mean, that's one of these clubs where they bring in world-class, artists. I mean, it's a jazz club. World-class acts, every week, folks are in there. You I don't know if you're into jazz, but if you're into music at all, you might want to check that club out.
Okay, I don't really listen to jazz, I'll be honest. Yeah, I don't. I couldn't even name a jazz artist.
We'll have to get you into jazz then. I'll have to maybe email you playlist.
Yeah, send me some of the good stuff, because I think even for my generation, jazz it's not really a thing, it's more pop, rap, R&B, but nobody really listens to jazz, I suppose. Yeah,
I mean, I think that there's definitely still a community for it. I work at Ohio State, and I'm the director of jazz studies there, and so part of my job is about recruiting students, right? And schools are still recruiting, students, and these students are not only jazz lovers, but they're trying to make a career out of playing jazz. And it is the case that I would definitely say that the jazz market has definitely shrunk, but jazz was actually young people's music. It always kind of has this I think we think of it as being sort of music for older people, but the people that were actually playing, folks like Miles Davis and John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, they were all very young, when they became stars, jazz stars, and most of the recordings that we hear that were sort of the iconic recordings were when they were very young. So it's interesting. But
Yeah,
I'll send you, like I said, I'll send you a playlist.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think jazz is something that you have to find rather than jazz finding you nowadays. It's something you have to go out of your way to listen to.
That's definitely true.
But yeah, sounds good. Send me a playlist. I'll give it a listen, and maybe, check out Ronnie Scott's sometime once lockdown is over and everything's back open again. Yeah.
And they got great food in there too. It's like a dinner club.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. This is actually the last question. So your name, Jessica X. Of course, I know that's not your that's not your government name. The X, is that a tip in any way to Malcolm X?
No, it's going to sound really like juvenile and not as interesting, but because I've been asked, are you Nation of Islam? Is it something to do with Malcolm X? Are you, Jessica X the knife? Did you name yourself after that? And it's like, no, it's literally just one of my middle names the X is like a kiss. When you send a text or something, you just end it with an X. So, it's not as interesting as it could be. Because I've heard conspiracy theories about the name. It's like she named herself Jessica X because she's modeling herself after Malcolm X, and she's pretending to be Nation of Islam, and she put that there so that she can infiltrate the Black American community. And then I've heard that I named myself Jessica X after a knife. There's a knife called Jessica X. And I named myself that because I'm here as a weapon to rip through the Black ADOS community and ruin it. And it's like all of these theories. And I'm like, it's actually really quite simple. It's just Jessica with a kiss at the end. So like girly, a bit juvenile, but hey, that's my name now, I suppose.
All right, Jessica. Well, thank you so much for your time and energy, and we'll have to have you back sometime. Maybe after the pandemic is over, or maybe we can do some kind of panel or something at some point.
Sounds good. I want to say thank you for having me on here. Laid back, chilled, and it's a different take on some of the questions that I've had before. It's coming at it from different angles. So that's interesting.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time.
Thank you for having me. And yes, see you soon.
All right, now. Goodbye.
All right, goodbye.